today we are going over one of the most probably hated albums from one of the big four. And that, my friends, yes, I own the CD. Before you type in the comments, why do you own it? Metallica's Saint Anger, their 2003 release. Now, let's just talk about some of the background to this album. Okay, a lot of people, after releasing stuff like the S&M and the Garage Inc. albums, along with a song for the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack, and then they're fighting with Napster about their song from Mission Impossible 2 getting released a couple days earlier. Their lawsuit with that, which they end up getting Napster shut down. Leading people to get very anxious, though, for another, official studio album with new songs that weren't anything that were, covers or taken off of B-sides from their previous albums. So, in January 2001, the band ended up renting an old United States Army barracks on the Presidio side of San Francisco, then converted it into their own makeshift studio. However, they had to delay recordings as their bassist Jason Newsted would leave on January 17th, 2001, stating that his departure was due to private and personal reasons and the physical damage I have done to myself over the years while playing the music that I love. So, yeah. And in July of 2001, recording came to a halt again when James Hetfield, the lead singer, entered rehab for alcoholism and other undisclosed addictions that I don't think have been talked about till this day. It was mainly alcoholism. He ended up returning to the band in April of the same year in 2001, but he was only allowed to work on the album from 12 to 4 p.m. So, yeah, they struggled to get through this album, and by the time it started, they really didn't want to try to go look for a bassist. The guy who worked on them in the past 3 albums, Bob Rock, was going to do bass. Now, obviously, Bob Rock, although Load and Reload were critically bashed, 1991's Black Album is their most sold album, and he was the producer of that. But, yeah, this time he's playing and producing on this album. So what did he want to do exactly? Saint Anger ended up being released on June 5th, 2003. It was scheduled to be released on June 10th, but due to its previous battle with Napster, in fear that their songs would get downloaded illegally again, they decided to push the date ahead 5 days. Yeah, the way Bob Rock announced it here, if I can find it, he said there was really no time to get all that great of performance out of James Hetfield, so therefore they just kind of went with what was there. And Kirk Hammett spoke on the no guitar solos, saying if we didn't feel like it wasn't going to be anything we didn't enjoy, then we wouldn't have put it out there. And then there was one of the things that pissed a lot of people off in this album, other than no guitar solos, which I had no problem with. Lars, Ulrich, and the fucking snare drum. I've said this before, as much as I think this album is okay, not by all a masterpiece, the snare drum can fit in some places, but why does it need to be in every goddamn minute of every goddamn song? You don't believe me? Don't believe how annoying this is? Listen to the drum track for their song Dirty Window and tell me how you feel. Yeah, you see what I'm getting at. And you're probably thinking, well, that doesn't sound like your typical snare drum now, does it? Well, yeah, that's because the snare part on the snare drum, Lars Ulrich kind of decided to take that off, and he never put it back on, so therefore the snare drum became a lot more ringier than usual. However, Lars Ulrich said he liked that better than the regular snare. Like I said, it could have been good in some places, but to have it through the whole entire album and every second of the songs just gives me such the worst of headaches. Because you heard what that snare sounded like. This is what a snare drum is supposed to sound like right here. Does that sound anything like what we got in Saint Anger? No. Another thing too, where the hell is the bass in this album? Like, Bob Rock, I know you're not really used to playing bass or doing really much of anything other than producing, but you know, where the hell is it? Because with Metallica, sometimes they like to use their bass as like main riffs, and sometimes they like to use their guitars as main riffs. The beginning of Saint Anger, that little riff there, I can't tell if that's guitar or bass. Here, listen to it right now. See, I don't know the difference. It's just too dumbed down, and you know, the underground feel to me seems cool. I felt like they could have done something with it had they thought it out better. But to me, out of his 4 albums with Metallica, Bob Rock produced 3 of their worst albums, mainly because he tried to make Metallica something they weren't. If they would have went back to doing the Black Album like they were, you know, like they wanted to in Load and Reload, I think everybody would have been fine with that. But the change in Load and Reload, hell, even them making a country song in one of the 2 albums, I think was what pushed the line for a lot of people. And then this shit, I think, just sold as much copies as it did because it was so anticipated. People had waited 6 years. They were like, this is the longest we've had to wait in between albums at the time. You know, that's just one thing that gets on my nerves with this is the snare drum, the bass. You can't even find it. You can't tell what's a little guitar riff and what's a bass riff, if any bass riffs. And I don't even know where Kirk Hammett is because most of this guitar work most likely is being done by James Hetfield. I do not even hear Kirk Hammett at any point in this album. And then there is the vocals by James Hetfield. Now, is he one of the better singers in the world? No, but for his genre of music, it works. That raunchy, growly voice that just, you know, gets you into the song and just gets you into it. There are some points where he tries to go where he can't go, and that is the falsetto. In Frantic, like this. James, just a word of advice to you, buddy. Glad you're fine, and glad the past 2 studio albums, not counting Lulu, have at least you've gone back to your roots and your vocals have cleaned up. But if you can't go falsetto, then don't try to go falsetto. Like, you know, I get it. You're trying to prove to us that you can do something else, but it didn't work the first time. Why would you try it again in another song? Like, Jesus Christ. But, you know, other than that, the lyrics at least have some meaning into it. This is basically about, you know, James Hetfield's alcoholism and suicidal thoughts, and, you know, that's cool and all, but, the lyrics are repetitive as hell. If you don't believe me, look up the lyrics to all 11 songs on this album. They're just super repetitive, and even when they're not, there's like little change in the lyrics. It's just like, how do you expect me to get into this album when you're just repeating the same lyrics over and over and over again? You know, like, go with your do what you did in your old songs. Mix the lyrics up. Don't do the same thing over and over. Give us a solo here and there, and lay off the fucking snare drum, you know? I mean, like I said, the underground sound could have sounded a lot cooler had they done it right, had Bob Rock had done it right with them, or maybe if Lars actually put the snare back on the goddamn snare drum, my brain wouldn't hurt after listening to this album. So, yeah, I mean, with that being said, the bad stuff, I mean, as much as there is, I don't see this album as terrifically bad. Like I said, is it perfect? No, by all means not. I don't think it's any of Metallica's best work. But also, this had to be a message to some fans that maybe, you know, when you get what you wish for, it may not always be what you want, whether that was their intention or not. We wanted an album from them, so they were like, you know what? We gave you an album. We gave you this album. You know, you waited so long, you wanted an album, here it is. You know, and, you know, that's basically what we get for saying we want an album. And with all that crap that they had going on, we should have just waited, let them find a bassist, let James figure out his shit before anything else, and maybe figure out if they want to use Bob Rock or not. Now, since then, they've gone with Rick Rubin, I think, for the past 2 releases, which is fine. That's great. I like Rick Rubin. But Saint Anger, like I said, the garage feel was kind of cool, and some of these, like, instrumentals, I don't want to say solos, because, like, beginning instrumentals are actually pretty cool, like the beginning instrumental to Frantic, the beginning instrumental to Saint Anger, the beginning instrumental to Some Kind of Monster, and Dirty Window, and Invisible Kid, you know, even The Unnamed Feeling, you know, all these songs, you know, start off pretty decent, and then you just get into, like, the first part of the chorus, and the other, so-called verses, even though they're practically all the same, and then you're just like really, you start off on a pretty decent note, and then all of a sudden, poof, like out of nowhere, I'm just disinterested. Now, I know I gave this album a 7.5 out of 10. Frankly, I would keep it that way because, like I said, the garage feels cool. There's cool instrumentals here, and at least singing the first part of the songs is better than before. But this was just so un-Metallica sounding and just had a lot of fans frustrated. And I think this review sums it up the best. Play Louder reviewer William Luff cited that the album's 75-minute length and sound a monolithic slab of noise as a reasoning that Saint Anger was just too dense and daunting to be truly enjoyable. Pop Matters reporter Michael Christopher added, Saint Anger dispenses the recent spat of radio-friendly pleasantries in favor of pedal-to-the-floor thrash, staggered and extended song structures, quick changes and muddled production that tries to harken back to the Kill 'Em All days. All attempts fail miserably. So if there's one thing we learn here, there's actually a couple things we learn here. Don't worry so much about when a band is releasing their album, because when they feel comfortable, when they feel things are situated, they'll do it. Because if you rush them, we'll get this. We'll get something like this. And don't ever expect a band to keep its style. For bands that want to move, that want to stay relevant, that want to keep going when they get to 10, 15, 20 years old, expect them to change their sound. Now, you might not be happy about this, and this might not be your cup of tea, but I do know some people out there who do enjoy this album because of its different sound and, you know, the way Metallica, you know, had balls to go out and do this. And 3, probably the last big one, don't ever take the snare off a snare drum, because you'll just constantly hear this. Anyway, now that I got my opinion out of the way, basically just went through this album. Do you like this album? Do you hate it? You know, or was it just something you figured at the time wasn't right? Or was it just the wrong band that tried doing whatever the hell you call this? And yeah, that about does it, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed something different. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, share. And I'll catch you guys next time.
Well,